To the modern human, a house is the most basic requirement for survival. 4 insulated walls, a locked door, and a permanent roof over your head. We spend 90% of our modern lives safely enclosed inside boxes. Yet for 99% of human existence, our ancestors built no permanent foundations, owned no bricks, and locked no doors. They survived relentless ice age blizzards, scorching desert droughts, and nighttime apex predators completely in the open air. They didn't just survive without houses. They conquered every single continent on Earth without ever laying a brick. Here is how ancient humans lived, slept, and thrived without 4 walls. To understand how humans lived without houses, we must redefine what shelter actually means. A modern house performs 3 primary functions. It keeps you warm, keeps you dry, and protects you from threats. For prehistoric nomads, the original house was not a structure made of wood or stone. The first true house in human history was the controlled hearth. Over 1 million years ago, early hominins mastered the technology of fire. Fire completely transformed the geography of human existence overnight. Anthropologists call the perimeter around a campfire an envelope of microclimate. Inside this radiant circle, the ambient temperature rises by 10 to 15 degrees. Smoke rising from the coals created a natural chemical dome that repelled biting insects and mosquitoes. More importantly, fire created an impassable psychological boundary against nocturnal predators. In the Pleistocene wild, every large carnivore instinctively feared open flames. A group of 30 humans sitting around 3 synchronized hearths was functionally safer than a modern person locked inside a wooden cabin. The fire provided warmth, visibility, cooked nutrition, and absolute perimeter defense. Furthermore, the hearth served as the communal living room, kitchen, and university of the tribe. It was where knowledge was shared, where toolmaking was taught, and where social bonds formed. Nomads didn't go inside a building to feel at home. Wherever the fire was sparked, that specific patch of dirt instantly became home. If rain poured from the sky, hunters utilized natural landscape contours. A shallow cliff overhang, a dense spruce tree canopy, or a ravine wall provided instant shelter. These were not permanent residences. They were temporary rest stops on an endless journey. Hunter-gatherers were constantly on the move, tracking migrating herds of deer, bison, and horses. Staying in one place for more than a few weeks meant depleting local game and wild roots. A permanent stone house would have been a deadly anchor, tying the tribe to a starving valley. Mobility was life, flexibility was survival. And when humans migrated into the brutally cold plains of Ice Age Europe and Siberia, where trees were virtually non-existent and winter temperatures plunged to -40 degrees, they engineered the world's first modular pop-up architecture. They didn't build with timber or mud. They built with the bones of giants. At archaeological sites like Mezherik in modern Ukraine, researchers discovered circular dwellings constructed from over 20 tons of mammoth bones. The foundation was built using stacked mammoth skulls and interlocking lower jawbones. Curved mammoth tusks were fitted together at the top to create a self-supporting dome roof. This monumental frame was then draped in multiple layers of thick hide, fur, and insulating turf. The entire structure was aerodynamic, perfectly deflecting howling sub-zero Arctic blizzards. Inside these bone pavilions, hearths fueled by dried mammoth bones and fat burned steadily. Bone burns hotter and longer than wood, creating an ultra-efficient, radiant heater. Yet, despite the massive weight of these bone structures, the hides, ropes, and internal furnishings were completely portable. When spring arrived, the tribe removed the hide coverings and moved north with the herds, leaving the bone skeletons behind to be reoccupied when they returned next winter. This was timeshare architecture 20,000 years before modern times. In warmer regions, human shelters were even lighter, faster, and more versatile. A hunter could construct a fully waterproof willow branch wickiup in less than 40 minutes. Covered in broad bark slabs, reed mats, or woven grass thatch, these temporary shelters provided total protection from tropical downpours. And when it was time to move on, they simply walked away. They left no concrete scars, no toxic debris, and no permanent damage on the ecosystem. Prehistoric humans were the ultimate masters of modular, lightweight civil engineering. Every gram of weight mattered when migrating across rugged mountain ranges. Nomadic hunters developed sophisticated folding structures that foreshadowed modern tents. Using lightweight pine poles and tailored bison hides sewn with waterproof sinew, a family of 4 could assemble a weather-resistant lodge in less than 15 minutes. These portable shelters were engineered with adjustable smoke flaps at the top, allowing interior fires to burn cleanly without suffocating the occupants with smoke. The aerodynamic conical shape offered almost zero wind resistance during Great Plains blizzards. In coastal regions, ancient humans adapted their shelter technology to marine resources. In the Arctic, Inuit ancestors constructed summer tents called tupiks from seal skins, and temporary winter dome shelters built entirely from compacted blocks of wind-blown snow. The igloo is one of the most brilliant thermodynamic inventions in human history. Dry, compacted snow contains up to 95% trapped still air, making snow one of the most effective natural thermal insulators on Earth. The entrance of an igloo was dug below ground level, creating a natural cold trap. Dense, cold air sank into the entry pit, while body heat and oil lamps warmed the living dome above. Even in sub-zero Arctic conditions, human body heat alone could warm the interior to room temperature. No wood, no metal, no bricks, just frozen water and human ingenuity. In tropical and subtropical zones, the primary environmental enemy was not cold, but humidity and insects. To survive in sweltering jungles, ancient humans invented elevated stilt platforms. Elevating the living floor allowed cool forest breezes to circulate beneath the sleeping mats, while keeping the family safely out of reach of venomous snakes, scorpions, and ground parasites. In the arid deserts of Australia, Aboriginal groups constructed the wurley or gunya. These were simple semicircular curved windbreaks made of layered branches and red clay. Oriented precisely against the prevailing seasonal winds, the wurley trapped radiant heat from a small trench fire and reflected it back onto sleeping bodies. Ancient humans never forced the landscape to conform to a rigid artificial box. Instead, they molded their shelters to harmonize with the exact physics of their microenvironment. Every shelter was custom-built using only materials found within a 5-kilometer radius. When a site was exhausted, the shelter was naturally reclaimed by the earth without a trace. Compare this to modern construction, which requires quarrying stone, smelting steel, and hauling heavy building materials across thousands of miles of paved roads. The ancient nomad carried their entire architectural toolkit in their mind and hands. They possessed the mental blueprint to build a life-saving home in any biome on Earth. Yet, there is one enduring cultural myth that continues to cloud our understanding of ancient living: the myth of the caveman. Pop culture tells us that ancient humans spent hundreds of thousands of years living in dark, damp caves. Archaeologists, however, have uncovered a completely different, surprising reality. Ancient humans almost never lived in the deep, dark interiors of caves. In fact, going deep into a cave was one of the most dangerous things an ancient human could do. Deep caves were freezing cold, pitch black, poorly ventilated, and chronically damp. If you lit a fire inside a deep cave tunnel, the smoke had nowhere to escape, quickly turning the stone chamber into a lethal, toxic carbon monoxide death trap. Furthermore, deep caves were the primary dens of terrifying prehistoric apex carnivores. Cave bears, cave lions, and giant hyenas spent their entire winters inside these chambers. No sane human band was going to stumble into the dark territory of a 400-kilo carnivore. When humans did use caves, they treated them exclusively as sacred ceremonial sanctuaries, or as temporary sunlit porches at the very entrance. The deep interior was a cathedral for art, ritual, and spiritual initiation. It was never an ordinary kitchen or bedroom. The real home of Homo sapiens was always under the open sky, illuminated by the sun, washed by the rain, and warmed by the portable hearth. When archaeologists examine prehistoric cave sites across southern France and Spain, they notice a consistent spatial pattern. All everyday domestic activity was confined to the sunlit threshold under the cliff overhang. Here, families had access to fresh daylight, clean air circulation, and natural chimney drafts. They could watch the surrounding valley for approaching herds or traveling clans. The deep subterranean chambers, located hundreds of meters in pitch-black darkness, were reserved for powerful spiritual rituals, art creation, and coming-of-age ceremonies. To paint animals on deep cave ceilings, artists constructed temporary wooden scaffolding and burned clean animal fat in carved sandstone lamps to minimize soot. They entered the dark underworld to connect with spiritual forces, and then returned to the open air to live their actual daily lives. In regions with no caves or cliffs, humans were equally at home in open terrain. Along the riverbanks of the Danube and the Nile, foragers constructed semi-subterranean pit houses. By digging a circular pit 1 meter into the earth, ancient builders took advantage of the Earth's natural thermal mass. The surrounding soil kept the interior cool in scorching summers and warm during winter freezes. A conical roof made of driftwood, turf, and clay was layered on top. These earth lodges were virtually invisible to passing wild herds and rival bands. They required minimal timber, making them ideal for treeless river deltas. And inside, the family lived in quiet, insulated comfort. In forested environments, ancient humans invented bark strip longhouses. By peeling massive sheets of bark from fallen trees during the spring thaw, they created lightweight, naturally waterproof shingles that lasted for seasons. These longhouses could shelter multiple extended families together, pooling their collective body heat and resources under one roof. Yet, whether living in a mammoth dome, a turf pit, or a bark longhouse, ancient humans maintained an intimate, direct connection with the outside world. They never experienced the modern psychological isolation of sealed indoor air. They heard the migration calls of geese flying overhead at midnight. They felt the shifting humidity of an approaching storm hours before it arrived. Their internal biological rhythms were synchronized perfectly with the sun and moon. They did not live in nature as visitors or tourists. They were nature, moving through their territory like water through a riverbed. And to keep this lifestyle possible, they engineered a personal, wearable shelter, the technology of tailored layered clothing. Before the invention of the eye needle around 40,000 years ago, humans were limited to loose-fitting capes and simple tied hides. The invention of the tiny polished bone eye needle changed human evolution forever. And so, airtight, multi-layered, waterproof Arctic survival suits. A tailored fursuit functions as a microclimate chamber that you wear on your body. Inner layers of soft caribou fawn fur were worn with the hair facing inward against the skin, while outer layers of thick winter hide were worn with the hair facing outward to shed snow. This created an insulating layer of trapped, motionless air around the human torso. With tailored clothing, an ancient human was carrying their own private house with them. They could sleep on open snowfields during a multi-day hunting expedition, and wake up completely rested, dry, and ready to track game. The clothing was the house. Beyond clothing and hearths, ancient humans possessed extraordinary biological adaptations. Modern humans living in heated homes have lost much of their physiological cold tolerance. Prehistoric hunter-gatherers, however, possessed active deposits of brown adipose tissue. Brown fat is a biological furnace that burns calories directly to generate metabolic heat, allowing individuals to sleep comfortably in near-freezing temperatures without shivering. Furthermore, ancient humans developed vascular adaptations known as the hunting response. Blood vessels in the fingers and toes periodically open and close in cycles, preventing frostbite while preserving the critical core body temperature. Their skin was naturally conditioned by constant exposure to sun, wind, and open air. Natural oils and wood smoke formed an invisible, protective antimicrobial barrier. They did not suffer from the modern chronic skin dryness caused by daily hot, soapy showers. Their immune systems were constantly stimulated by diverse environmental microbes. Allergies and autoimmune disorders were virtually non-existent in nomadic populations. They possessed incredible sensory acuity that modern indoor living has dulled. Their vision was calibrated for vast panoramic depths rather than glowing glass screens. Their hearing could distinguish between the rustle of a harmless bird and a stalking predator. Their sense of smell could detect a distant rainstorm or a fresh water source miles away. They did not need electronic weather apps or satellite forecasts. The entire atmosphere was their living sensory interface. And how did ancient humans sleep without bedrooms, mattresses, and deadbolts? To the modern urbanite, sleeping in the wild sounds like an absolute nightmare. We imagine lying awake in terror, waiting for wolves or hyenas to attack in the dark. Yet, sleep research reveals that hunter-gatherers experienced deep, restorative sleep. They didn't sleep in isolated, soundproof bedrooms like modern individuals. They slept in a collective, tactile heap of trusted human bodies. Anthropologists call this co-sleeping, or the social cocoon. The physical presence, breathing, and heartbeat of your clan members triggered a constant flow of oxytocin, shutting down the brain's stress and threat centers. You never felt alone, vulnerable, or abandoned in the dark. Furthermore, nomadic bands utilized a natural system of staggered sleep shifts. Evolutionary biologists at Duke University call this the sentinel hypothesis. In any group of 30 hunter-gatherers, there was almost never a moment when everyone was asleep. Elderly members naturally woke up at 3 in the morning to stoke the hearth coals, while energetic teenagers stayed awake late into the night sharing stories. At least one adult was always awake, listening to the night and tending the flame. The sleeping band was protected by an unbroken chain of living human sentinels. You didn't need a deadbolt when you had 5 family members keeping watch. Their sleep was also polyphasic and bimodal. They often slept in 2 4-hour blocks, waking up for an hour of quiet reflection, stargazing, making tools, or talking softly with a partner, before drifting back into another deep, restful sleep until dawn. They woke up naturally with the rising sun, without jarring digital alarm clocks. Their cortisol levels rose smoothly with the daylight, providing steady, clean energy. They didn't experience the chronic fatigue, insomnia, or sleep apnea of modern urban life. They stepped out of their fur blankets fully energized, vibrant, and alive. Their bedroom was a 500-square-mile pristine wilderness. Their ceiling was the infinite tapestry of the Milky Way galaxy, and their floor was the living, breathing soil of planet Earth. They were not homeless. The entire planet was their home. When you live without four walls, your mental geography functions completely differently. A modern city resident remembers street names, subway lines, and building numbers. An ancient nomad held an encyclopedic, three-dimensional mental map of an entire biome. They knew which ravine retained fresh meltwater during the driest month of August. They knew which hillside sprouted wild medicinal chamomile after the first spring rain. They knew which ancient pine trees yielded flammable resin for waterproofing tools. The landscape was not empty wilderness, it was a gigantic, open-air library. Every rock formation, mountain peak, and riverbend was named and mapped in song. Australian Aboriginal songlines are perhaps the most sophisticated navigation system ever created. By memorizing rhythmic songs passed down through hundreds of generations, a traveler could navigate across thousands of kilometers of featureless desert, knowing exactly where to find hidden waterholes, flint quarries, and shelter. The song was the GPS. The landscape was the screen. Furthermore, living without houses fostered an intense, unbreakable social cohesion. In a modern house, you can slam your bedroom door, put on headphones, and disappear. You can live 10 feet away from your neighbors for 10 years and never know their names. In an open nomadic camp, chronic isolation was structurally impossible. Every joy was shared by 30 people. Every grief was carried by the entire tribe. If a child was born, 30 pairs of hands raised, taught, and protected that child. If an elder grew too frail to walk, the strongest young hunters carried them on wooden litters. No one was left behind in a nursing home. No one died alone in an empty room. The tribe was a single living, breathing superorganism. And this social safety net provided a psychological resilience that modern humans can barely fathom. Modern humans have thousands of digital followers, but frequently zero people who would carry them through a blizzard. The ancient human had 30 companions who would literally risk their lives for them every single day. They possessed zero material wealth, but infinite social capital. So why did humanity ever abandon this vibrant open-air existence? Why did we trade the boundless horizon, the starlit sky, and the mobile hearth for cramped mud-brick rooms, locked wooden doors, and property lines? The catalyst was the agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago. When humans began cultivating grain, they became tied to specific plots of dirt. You cannot carry a wheat field or an irrigation canal on your back. To protect their stored harvest from raiders and pests, humans built permanent walls. And for the first time in history, humans began sleeping inside sealed masonry boxes. The house was invented not as an upgrade in happiness, but as a security vault for agricultural surplus. We built walls to protect the grain, and in doing so, we accidentally locked ourselves inside. The four walls that were designed to keep danger out became the very prison that kept us from the wild. Today, we live in climate-controlled luxury. We have central heating, memory foam mattresses, and automated security alarms. Yet our evolutionary biology remains virtually identical to our Pleistocene ancestors. Our lungs still crave fresh, oxygen-rich forest air instead of recirculated indoor dust. Our eyes still need the wide panoramic depth of the horizon to relax. Our minds still hunger for the intimate communal warmth of the shared campfire. And our souls still remember what it felt like to sleep under the open stars. Humans did not just live without houses for 200,000 years. We thrived, we explored, we conquered the planet. And in the quiet moments when you step outside on a clear, starry night and feel the cool night breeze against your face, you are remembering the true home our species never really left. The next time you step into your house and turn the deadbolt, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey that brought us here. The house is a miraculous technological achievement. It protects our children from the elements and grants us unprecedented comfort. It allows millions of people to survive in harsh climates that would otherwise be uninhabitable. It is the physical foundation upon which modern science, art, and civilization were built. Without permanent shelter, we could never have built libraries, universities, or laboratories. We could never have developed complex manufacturing, computers, or space telescopes. The house made modern civilization possible. Yet it is equally vital to remember what we surrendered in the trade. We traded absolute physical freedom for absolute physical security. We traded a 500 square mile living territory for a 900 square foot apartment. We traded the constant, reassuring presence of 30 lifelong clan members for the quiet, echoing solitude of modern suburban isolation. We traded the raw, unfiltered vitality of the natural elements for stagnant indoor air and artificial fluorescent lighting. This is why our modern souls feel a sudden, inexplicable surge of joy the moment we step into a wild forest, pitch a tent, or sit around a simple campfire. That feeling is not a hobby. It is not an escape from reality. It is your evolutionary biology waking up and recognizing its true home. Your DNA remembers the smell of burning birchwood. Your ears remember the rhythmic murmur of a sleeping tribe. Your feet remember the soft, dewy texture of unpaved forest moss. And your eyes remember the boundless glory of the unpolluted night sky. You don't need to abandon your house or destroy your computer. You don't need to move into a mammoth bone hut on the frozen tundra. You simply need to remember that four walls are a tool, not a habitat. A house is where you store your tools and rest your head. The world outside is where you actually live. Whenever modern life feels overwhelming, claustrophobic, or lonely, step outside the box. Feel the wind on your face. Look up at the endless sky. Listen to the ancient murmur of the trees. And remember that for 200,000 years, the entire planet was our living room. The stars were our ceiling, and humanity was completely, magnificently free.